of your motions can make the confidence ring. Yet in all your might and glory, vanished from the sky, leaving just another story, misleading man-made lies. They tell them how you fell from the sky. You wasn't proud.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today is Larry Pratt, founder of Gun Owners of America. Hello, Larry. How are you?
Hey, good morning to you, Clay. Good to be with you.
Nice to have you back, sir. Nice to have you back. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I think it's really made a difference. Am I wrong to feel like maybe the NRA has kind of been compromised a little bit?
Well, it's kind of a dilemma of their own making, because they view the political process as so powerful that they just got to kind of accept it as it is, maybe work a little bit around the edges, but their principal way of handling a political problem is to want to do it from the inside, want to have access, want to be part of the process, want to have a seat at the table. And that means they're willing to go along with whatever consensus people like Charles Schumer, Dianne Feinstein, and other lovelies have in mind for the ruled. They accept the notion tacitly. They would deny this heatedly if you put it to them just this way, but in practice, they accept the idea that there's a ruling class and that we're the ruled, and that we ought to just try to cut the best deal we can and shut up. And our view is that there ought not to be a ruling class. That's an illegitimate notion that violates our Constitution. We, the people, did hereby ordain and establish this democratic republic, and we're not the ruled at all. We are the rulers. We are the sovereign. We are the ones that tell the folks in government what to do, because they're our employees. They work for us. And to accept the idea of the ruling class is really to volunteer for the chains and handcuffs. And that's why you see the NRA, for example, Senator Coburn, who's the head of the Second Amendment caucus in the Senate, had a measure a couple of years ago, which is now law, to undo the ban on guns in national parks that had been an Interior Department policy since the Reagan administration. And Coburn found a bill that he figured the president just would absolutely sign no matter what, and put his measure as an amendment on that bill, and the NRA was encouraging him not to do that. Well, we don't know that we can win, and we sure don't want to have a defeat. That would be just terrible. It would set us back. You don't want to do that. Well, he did want to do it, and he got 65 votes in the Senate. There's a dynamic that a lot of people don't take account of in especially gun politics, but I think it probably prevails in other areas as well. That is that when you're trying to get a head count, you're going to get mind faked. You're going to get people, members of the Senate, members of the House, playing games with you. I remember one time Senator Bob Smith, then of New Hampshire, called and said, look, I'm working on my amendment. I want to get a vote on it. And he said, the NRA told me that their vote count shows that they only got 40 votes. We only got 40 for this measure. And they're urging me not to do it because the defeat would be just terrible, set back and put us back so far, and we just can't afford to take the risk. And he said, so what do you think? I was in my office. I wasn't even up on the Hill. And I said, well, I'll be honest with you, I don't have a head count. I don't put much stock in them, because I know, Senator, this will come as a great shock to you, but some of your colleagues are liars. And he said, "Oh, okay, yeah, I didn't know that." So he was just as ironic as I was. Anyway, I said, "I think what's going to happen if you push that and get a recorded vote is that you're going to win, and that what you're hearing right now is the result of people trying to dissuade you from doing it. They don't want to vote on the record, because if it's on the record, they'll have to vote for it. They don't like your pro-gun measure, and they would rather kill it, and the only way they can kill it is to cause you to lose heart through a phony vote count." I said, "If you push that, I think you're going to win. If you don't, you're still our hero, and that's what we're going to be telling the world, is that you gave us at least a political tool to take to the next elections so that we can, sorry about this, Democrat media, so we can target and take out various members of the Senate who might vote wrong on your measure." He said, "That's all I wanted to hear." And he went and he got the vote, and he didn't get 40 votes. He only got 60, I think it was 66. 66. Maybe it was 67. I think it might have been veto-proof. So this goes to show that if you don't ask for something, you're sure not going to get it. And if you're led by a spirit of fear, that's not what God gave us. He gave us a spirit of boldness. And so you've got the NRA really in a prison of their own mind, of their own making. And then that just translates to making concessions and not doing things that you otherwise might do. Coburn, to return to his story, was so frustrated with this. The NRA was trying to keep him from doing it in the Senate. He wins. He goes to the measure goes back to the House because it was a House-originated bill. They got to approve the change that he'd made, and there they tried to water it down over there. They failed, but it really torqued him. And at a banquet that we held for him in Tulsa to thank him for what he had done to honor him, he, in his remarks accepting our award to him for his service, kind of recounted a little bit of this situation and said, as far as I'm concerned, GOA is the only gun lobby in Washington. So that can kind of give you an idea of how this plays out, the difference between us in legislation. And you see an analog to that in the political realm in elections. Last year, the NRA made a contribution of $4,950 to Harry Reid's re-election campaign. In the primary, we had endorsed Sharon Angle, who won the primary, and of course we endorsed her in the general. By the way, she's running again. This time she's going to be running for the House seat up in the Reno area. The incumbent is going to be running to fill the vacancy of Senator Ensign, who, well, not vacancy, but he's not going to seek re-election, and so Congressman Heller is going to run for that seat. And Sharon Angle is hopefully going to be the one to take his place in the House of Representatives. But getting back to the election year, there were a whole bunch of Blue Dog Democrats. I think there were some 50 plus, and the NRA had endorsed them, but yet only 3 of them had what you could call anything close to a pro-gun record. The 3 that we just didn't bother with because we thought, well, they voted almost good enough. They voted for Nancy Pelosi, but every other vote they had voted pro-Second Amendment, but not the rest. And so all the rest of those we thought were up for grabs, and we identified over 30 their challengers that we thought would be trying to make a difference in Washington, not seeking a place at the table, if you will, but trying to get a better table set, get a new system, change the system. And we endorsed those people even while the NRA was endorsing the Blue Dogs. And
didn't the NRA just basically ignore Ron Paul? Didn't they exclude him from any type of promotion or any type of information?
I think that's probably true. He's been in long enough now that I know that we were with him at the beginning, and of course he's been very kind to us, and he's called us the only no compromise gun lobby in Washington. My guess is that the NRA, right, just doesn't deal with him, period. We think Ron Paul, of course, is a very principled guy, and we're really glad that he and his son are in the Congress. And that's probably a good example of, you got a guy there that's extremely pro-Second Amendment, and he sees the big picture. He sees that we ought to be out of the UN because the UN, among other things, is trying to grab our guns. And so you kind of want to work with people like that rather than ignore them. They're not an embarrassment. They're a treasure. But anyway, the political and legislative differences, I think, are pretty stark. And, you could say, well, the NRA has been taken over, but when you look around Washington, and Gun Owners of America is right outside the Beltway, we lobby the Congress from a secure location in Northern Virginia, you see all kinds of groups with the same set of assumptions that we see driving the NRA. And I think that's the problem, is that they're thinking the same way that so many others do. Well, everybody knows that this is the way to do it.
I couldn't help but think it just because I really identify propaganda. And when you were talking about the rights of the individual in our Constitution and how I thought, well, no wonder he got labeled with me as a radical on the NAACP little bulletin that they put out. You and I were supposed to be radical anti-Semite.
The Law Center has a similar list of people they don't like either, and I agree with you. It's the way you get on their list is to challenge the legitimacy of illegitimate exercise of power. They look at that as frightening, and they assume that somehow you're a bomber waiting to go off. But I got a newsflash for them. The bombers waiting to go off are found in mosques on Friday. That's where the problem is. It's not people who believe in the Constitution. It's a remarkable default position that they have, and there's a debate over almost any issue, and if you disagree with them, well, then you're racist.
The term that I've been called, and I'm pretty sure you've been included in this over the last 20 years, was anti-government, and I tried to tell people I'm the most pro-government guy you'll ever meet. I just want the Constitution, the Republican form of government guaranteed me by the Constitution.
Right. It's legitimate government that we favor, and if they are trying to pull the wool over our eyes and say that any old form of government you got to be in favor of, well, that was the Nazis' idea. That was the Soviets' idea. That's not the American idea. So these guys, frankly, we've had so much miseducation in our school system at this time that people don't even know what legitimate government ought to look like, because the Constitution is something that lawyers don't study. I have the only lawyers that I know of who actually have studied the Constitution in con law classes come from Regent University in Virginia Beach, Virginia. The rest of them only study cases, and typically from the last 20, 30 years, and that's what they think of as constitutional law. And what that tells you is that in their mind, the Constitution ought to be just left alone where it is under glass in the National Archive, because the real Constitution, the living Constitution, are these cases over the last 20, 30 years, which means the real Constitution, the living Constitution, is whatever a bunch of politicians wrapped in black cloth say it is. And that is, to disagree with that and to say that that's wrong, I think you're right. That's where this alarming declaration is heard, declaring that you and I and many others, Michelle Bachmann, are anti-government. Well, only if you accept their misinterpretation of what government is. You would have to then, given their interpretation, just say, well, if the jackboots want to take those Jews away, I mean, doggone it, that's what the government's doing, and you don't want to be anti-government now, do you? And if there's going to be a great purge there in the Soviet Union under Stalin, well, that's you can't be anti-government now, can you? And if Idi Amin's trying to wipe out all the Christians in Uganda, well, it's just that's the government. You can't be anti-government now, can you? This is the mentality of a slave, and typically slaves in the South, the accounts that I've read of, were alarmed when somebody would talk about liberating slaves, because they were afraid that it's only going to be worse for us if you talk like that. Shut up! It's bad enough already. And this alarmist talk about, oh, you're anti-government, I think that's probably the same way of thinking. It's almost as if they are in the suffering from the Stockholm syndrome, which is what's been taken to describe the captive of a kidnapping that begins to identify as a self-defense measure, probably, with his captor. Patty Hearst, when she was captured by a bunch of nut jobs many years ago out in California, ended up robbing banks with them.
Now, Larry, I think you're talking about some of President Obama's best friends, William Ayers and Bernadine Dorn,
Bernadine Boom Boom Dorn?
Yeah, that's the one. I think that's the one, yes.
Yeah. She was pretty good with bombs herself, and Ayers, I guess, has been jealous ever since. Didn't think he'd done enough.
He made
that remarkable statement in a column that was published in the New York Times on September 11, 2001. If it had not been for the attack on the World Trade Center, that would have probably become a very notorious, stupid thing to say. But he was protected by the falling rubble of the World Trade Center, and it covered up the stupidity of that column. Anyway, there's something going on right now, and you may have talked about it already, and it's certainly something that would be of concern to people in your neck of the woods, is that the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, usually referred to as the ATF, has been doing something so wildly irresponsible that they have become accessory to murder.
You mean the smuggling of guns or the running of guns into Mexico?
That very, very program that they've had. It's funny, when even on Fox, you can run into unexpected headwinds. When this story was just about to break, I've been working with the two bloggers that had developed it. Mike Vanderbo, who has a blog site called Sipsey Street Irregulars, and David Codria, who writes for the Examiner, Examiner.com, and his moniker, I guess, is the Gun Examiner, or the Gun Rights Examiner, whatever. They had been in touch with the agents. My guess is they had somehow made contact with them through a sort of a chat room called cleanupatf.org, and it was mainly populated by agents writing anonymously, complaining about various and sundry problems that they saw at the ATF. And one of the big problems that had been dominating cleanupatf.org was, of course, this problem of the agency running guns into Mexico. I went on to Fox. Megyn Kelly was the host, and they wanted to talk about Andrew Traver, who's the head of the Chicago ATF office, who's radically anti-gun and naturally then would be suitable for Obama to appoint as the permanent director of the ATF. Well, they only wanted to talk about Traver and the fact that he had some law enforcement support for him because crime had gone down, and particularly gang crime, had gone down in Chicago during his time there. And I said, well, look, I don't care what kind of police record he has. He wants to grab our guns, and I went through the background that he had, particularly his signing on to a report that was issued by a conference he had attended, which was the Sarah Brady wish list for all kinds of gun control, including a renewal of the Clinton gun ban. I said, but look, and this is where I started to get into trouble with her, because this wasn't something that was in their script. I said, he's not going to have a hearing because it's been postponed by Senator Leahy, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and it's been postponed because the guy would have to answer questions about why the ATF is accessory to murder, which is a result of this gun runner program, where guns have gone into Mexico and have been used to murder a couple of our ATF, our ICE agents, Immigration Customs Enforcement agents. And then she started to pull back and say, well, we determine what questions are asked here, and besides, the BATF's not here to defend themselves. I said, you won't get the BATF here to defend themselves because they don't want to be under oath to answer, or even not under oath, to answer questions about what they've been doing to run guns into Mexico, to jack up the numbers of guns that are found at the crime scene that can be traced back to the States, because most of the guns that turn up in crime in Mexico don't come from the States, in spite of the narrative that our government has had that, whoa, it's our fault, all these private gun owners and their RPG launchers getting into Mexico, causing those poor Mexicans problems, when you and I know that you wish you could perhaps go and buy an RPG launcher at a gun show, but that ain't going to happen. Sorry about that. What's really been happening is that the guns have been coming into Mexico the same way the dope comes into Mexico, by boat, by plane, and they don't come from the States. The dope is intended for the States, and the guns obviously didn't come from the States because they came in with the dope. They came in on those same transports. And so what the ATF was trying to do was to make it more credible when they claimed that the gun problem in Mexico was the result of our lax U.S. laws. We need more money at the BATF. We need more agents. We need more gun control. And it turns out this thing's starting to blow up in their face. And happily, I was able to get that point out on Fox, in spite of the fact that it was not on the script that Megyn Kelly had. And then the next day, Cheryl Atkinson, a reporter that is on the evening news at CBS, has done, I think now, 6 or 7 segments over a couple, 3 weeks on this very issue. She has done a wonderful job. She's interviewed agents, 2 of whom were willing to be identified and on camera. So you see these 2. One's Dotson and the other is Jaques, and they describe what was going on and how just absolutely Looney Tunes they found this to be. And when they first learned of it, they told their superiors, you can't do this. This just can't end up well. And so to the credit of some of these street agents, they were men who had good sense and were honorable, and 2 of them have had the courage to come public, and others have been contacted thanks to the bloggers who got the information to Senator Grassley's office, and Grassley has been in touch with a bunch of these guys now. He's got the story, and he's scaring the willies out of the folks in Justice and in ATF. He's been writing, he first wrote a letter to the acting director, Melson, at ATF, and he said, I want you to brief my staff. I want your staff to brief my staff, so I want to know what's going on with this gun runner program. And he didn't even get an answer. Instead, a few days later, he got a call from an agent, could have been Dotson, down in the Phoenix area, saying, Senator, I know you wrote that letter because now they're trying to break my arm, keep me from talking. He said, this just can't go on. And then Grassley wrote a letter to Nelson explaining to him all of the really nasty things that can happen to somebody that tries to stop any number of whistleblowers, and he cited federal law and how many years you could end up spending in jail. So the next letter came from Lanny Brewer, the Assistant Attorney General in charge of ATF at the Justice Department, saying nobody here but us chickens. And Grassley wrote another letter saying, I want answers to these specific questions. I want email between these dates dealing with gun runner. I want to know this question, this question. And, well, of course, as somebody pointed out, Grassley's an attorney, and attorneys are trained not to ask questions that they don't know the answer to, because what they're fishing for is to see if you'll supply any additional information or if you'll commit a perjury. So, and in this case, Grassley now has these guys lying through their teeth. He fired off another letter to Brewer. He got a kiss-off letter from Eric Holder, and now Holder has told Mexican television that I don't know nothing. I don't know what's going on here. And Obama did a sit-down interview with Jorge Ramos of Univision, and said, I don't know nothing. This is, it's just I got a big government to run here, and there's just a lot of details I don't know about.
Larry,
And,
in my book, Mystery Babylon, I've got the whole story of Operation Watchtower, run by the Special Forces, and the CIA. They were involved with the CIA and Mossad, bringing drugs from Colombia into Panama under Noriega, and then shipping them up to a little place in Arkansas, a protected place in Arkansas called Mena, Arkansas. This was all happening at the same time. Iran-Contra was going on, but this operation seemed to be a little bit more top secret, and it almost seemed too fantastic to be real, and until you start thinking about us being invading Afghanistan. And because those nasty old Taliban were destroying the opium poppy crops, and now our soldiers are protecting them. Who are they working for, Larry? I mean, it's really hard to tell the good guys from the bad guys here.
It gets complicated. Well, the ATF has certainly made that difficult to distinguish, and it's to the credit of some of the agents involved who've taken the risk of being whistleblowers, that they were getting this information out when they were contacted by Senator Grassley. And Grassley, even a little bit before you and I started talking, had been on Laura Ingram's national talk show ripping on the ATF and this whole scandal. The scandal also includes, and I'm sure you've probably mentioned this before, is that the agent that was killed in Arizona, one was killed in Mexico, the other was killed in Arizona. When Brian Terry and his partner saw some folks that looked like they might be illegals, they had AK, I think they were AKs, they told them to drop their weapons. Of course, they didn't. And so, because of the rules of engagement that Janet Napolitano, a.k.a. Inspector Magoo, the one that said that the southern border is just fine, thank you very much,
yes.
Nothing here to look at, keep on going.
Okay.